In a world where challenges loom large and the call for meaningful impact grows stronger, don't you wish that there was an organization or a nexus of innovation or a beacon of hope? Imagine a curated set of extraordinary humans from diverse backgrounds, each possessing a unique ingredient for transformative change. Sounds pretty exciting, doesn't it? Well, that idea has already hatched. And by that, I mean there is an organization, a nonprofit at that, called Hatch, HATCH, that stands for a better world, one idea, one connection, and one solution at a time. And to talk about Hatch is Yarrow Kraner. He is the creative alchemist, as he calls himself. Yarrow is the founder of Hatch, and H360.ai is an Aspen Institute Fellow, RSA Fellow, and named 2015 Top 100 Creatives in the US by Origins. He is a pioneer of social networking and has been building communities for 20 years. He's directed projects with Richard Branson, The Rock, P. Diddy, and more. In 1999, Yarrow created an online network, the Hero Project, which grew to 1.5 million users and was acquired by Fox. In 2004, Yarrow founded Hatch, connecting global influencers to accelerate solutions for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In 2016, Yarrow founded H360.ai, a machine learning impact collaboration platform. Well, Yarrow, absolute honor to have you on the podcast.
So honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I love the term creative alchemist.
Well, yeah, thank you. When you can put ingredients together and the sum of the parts create gold.
Yeah,
And we do a lot of
wonderful.
alchemy with the curation of individuals. We sort of joke that human potential is exponential, and 1 + 1 = 11 if the curation is done properly.
Right. Lovely. So, what motivated you to start a hatch, and what is your mission and vision?
The motivation to start Hatch actually was sort of a bit of inspired by the company that I started right before that in 1999, several years before Facebook and MySpace. It was a social network based on the premise of finding and connecting real life superheroes, a platform for people to be recognized for their greatness in the world that aren't just athletes and entertainers, but scientists and teachers and people of all walks of life and kids of all ages. And the message was there's extraordinary people among us, and to find one, look within. And so we set out on a mission to go find and connect all these incredible human beings. I mean, at the very beginning, there was like a composer that was teaching deaf kids how to read and
Hmm.
play music, and a scientist that was piecing the ozone layer back together, and then just a bunch of regular amazing individuals, and we built that to about 1.5 million people from '99 to 2003, and when there was a volunteer match engine similar to your platform actually, where we matched people. We got at them a prompt like, "How do you save the world? Start with where you are. Type in your zip code, and you're given 10 things you can do within a 3-mile radius of where you live to positively impact your backyard and community." So we started mobilizing people into their communities to do like park reclamations and neighborhood cleanups and walking dogs for the Humane Society. It
It's
was
amazing.
inspiring. We got a lot of letters from child psychologists and parents and
Hmm.
so forth. But
Hmm.
when that company got acquired, I was sort of
Hmm.
scratching my head trying to figure out what was next, and I realized that the studio that bought it bought a brand and not the purpose, and the purpose was still
Hmm.
to go find and connect real life superheroes, and that's when Hatch was born 20 years ago. And the mission of Hatch is pretty simple. I mean, we we find and connect extraordinary human beings at the front edge of systems change and impact. And when we put them together, they accelerate each other's work. and then we can point those superpowers at different challenges. So Hatch kind of essentially has two lanes. One is the curated convenings, and the other is the impact labs under Hatch Studios, which we have lots of examples about. But that's where we sort of kind of like focusing the sun through a magnifying glass. We put a lot of diverse thinkers, perspectives, generations, ethnicities together, because with more diverse perspectives, you get to daylight the blind spots, and that's where the acupuncture points are for systems change.
Hmm. Well, that's wonderful. To even come up with a plan like this. Now, how do you get people on board? Do they approach you or do you approach them?
Well, it's shifting a little bit over the years. We used to be sort of intentionally under the radar, and we would just kind of reach out and grab people as we would discover them. But now, 20
Hmm.
years in, we have a pretty significant community around the world, and there's a lot of nominations and word of mouth. And so people reach out, they go to the website, hatchexperience.org, they can apply,
Hmm.
or oftentimes people that have been through Hatch will make nominations for people that they recommend, or either
Right, right.
or learn about in their everyday life. And at this point,
Hmm.
when you're sitting at a table between a NASA astronaut, a paleontologist, the inventor of
Yeah.
Siri, a composer, that everyone's leaning in and learning from each other. A 17-year-old kid that's got two patents on turning human waste into electricity. It gets exciting because everyone is
Yeah.
teaching and learning, and sort of a 360-degree mentorship environment.
Yeah, sounds very exciting. And so, my question would be, you've got so many people on board, you've got people from varied walks of life, and everybody must be having their own opinion, right? So, how do you get people to agree on something, and how do you get people to work on something as a collaborative effort?
Well, that's a beautiful question. There's the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as dictated by the UN in 2015. Uh, they thought that we would be a lot farther ahead in solving these SDGs by this time, and by
Mhm.
2030. And recently, there's been studies kind of wondering why we're so far behind. And a big piece of that is because uh, in today's world, moving so quickly, people move past the relational aspect. And that's one of the places that Hatch really focuses on. So there's a movement now around the IDGs, the interdevelopment goals. Like, in order to hatch a better
Mhm.
world, you have to hatch our best selves. And and so one of the ways that we do that is by really focusing on intentional design around how to build trust. And
Mhm.
collaboration only moves at the speed of trust. And so if we can build these containers of trust where people can sort of shed their armor of their name badge and title, and really come at things as a human, um, and with empathy. It's not always about trying to get people to agree. It's really around
Mhm.
getting people to at least see each other's perspectives and grow empathy, and start to bridge that divide, you know instead of that divide growing. And so once you've sort of
Right.
approached with a set of common values, like what's important to me, safety of my family, like, oh well, who doesn't want that? Like,
Mm.
once you
Mm.
identify these
Mm.
commonalities, you can approach these large challenges from very different perspectives and opposing viewpoints with a lot of success.
Right. Uh, so that brings me to a question. How do you select a project? How do you select something that, okay, this is something that needs attention, and we are going to be working on this project now. So could you just tell us from, so that the lay person who's listening to this understands what you do?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a there's no shortage of things that need to be addressed. Inequities in the world, and climate, and over the years, like, we were originally sort of aligned with the 17 global goals, and we've narrowed a bit into really focusing on climate and education and entrepreneurship, social impact entrepreneurship. and equity. And it's all really tied together in this kind of, view that really, like, the people that are most impacted by climate change are those that don't have the strongest of voices. And so there's inequities there,
Hmm.
and everything
Hmm.
is intertwined. And so, we've been keyed in more recently into these 9 planetary tipping points. And so if we can find these 9 planetary tipping, I mean, if we know what the planetary tipping points are, but if we can find the levers that can create the most cascading positive effects. For instance, I learned within the last year that nearly a third of the world's fresh water comes from the Amazon basin. So that
Right.
basin is generating this whole system, and through the rivers in the sky,
Hmm.
shipping precipitation across the Atlantic over to Europe and Africa and up to the US and feeding all the aquifers in the US. But that basin's under threat. And so,
Hmm.
it works optimally at 80% coverage.
Hmm.
Currently it's closer to 30% coverage. When it hits 25% coverage, that is a tipping point. It passes the point of no return. It's on its way. The basin is then on its way to becoming a desert within 35 to
Yeah.
40 years. And then that tipping point has a dramatic cascading effect to the other 8.
To
And
everything.
so
Yeah.
we're doing some work with, the indigenous leaders of the Amazon, a woman named Atosa Sotani, founder of Amazon Watch and Sacred Headwaters. And similar, a couple of years ago, around the environment, there was a lot of increased awareness around the toxicity of
Hmm.
microplastics ending up in our bodies and
Yes.
being
Yes.
measured
Yes.
in breast milk and babies, and all the plastic that's been dumped in the ocean over the years has found itself in these gyres and are grinding up against each other into these imperceptible little beads, and then evaporating, precipitating, and being measured, and also in mountain streams in the U.S. and Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we put 160 executives. We partnered with a group called Soul Buffalo, an amazing expeditions company, and brought 160 executives from some of the largest creators of plastics in the world: Dow Chemical, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, and so forth, with these adversarial relationships: Greenpeace, Ocean
Hmm.
Conservancy, World Wildlife
Hmm.
Fund. And so you had $385 billion of industry with these
That's
very opposed agendas of these NGOs trying to shut them down. And the design challenge was, how do we get them to approach this as a human challenge and not an agenda-based challenge? And so we got people in the water and sliced open the fish and showed the plastics in the fish, and had a lab on board and tested the water. And then once we had everyone back on board, a cello started playing, and a spoken word poet takes us to 30 years in the future. And we asked them to write themselves letters to themselves from their future self, and
hmm. Hmm.
about what they did to be a part of the solution for this challenge. And then after a couple minutes, we just added, we're going to collect these letters and send them to your families so your kids can read them. So there is a layer of accountability. And you could hear a pin drop. I mean, there was a moment where everyone really started recognizing that we are sharing this very fragile home called Earth, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
if we don't approach this as these collective humans with families and kids and adults and siblings and parents and so forth, we won't have anything to sort of wrestle over anymore. So it's not people are always talking about saving the planet. The planet's quite resilient. It'll be fine eventually.
Yeah.
I think it's
But
the
we
human
do need to
species
take those steps. Yes. Yes.
and how the humans can coexist with thoughtfully with the other organisms on this planet.
Very true. A very interesting fact. You ask people to write letters to their future selves. Let's take a break to understand what Chezuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chezuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chezuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chezuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chezuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest. Now, do you think, and this is a question that is not related per se to your work, but do you feel that people today need to be reminded of the fact that they are looking into a future that could be bleak if they don't act today? Do you think people need to be reminded to do that?
Well, there's no question that there is an increased urgency. The paradox is that people are responding less and less to fear-based narratives, and there's a little bit of a numbing that has occurred around climate and so forth. And remember when COVID hit in 2020, there were some memes and people kind of joking that, geez, sure wish that climate change could get COVID's PR agent. And because everyone stopped, doing all the things that we needed to do to protect ourselves, and you could see the earth bounce back. You could see the skies in India clear and the waters in Venice.
Absolutely, yes, yes, totally.
And so there's a careful balance there of information and potentially even like inspiration for what we want to envision as an aspirational future, but also the urgency and the immediacy. I mean, one of the quotes from Atolsa Sultani that really moved me in one of my conversations with her is that the U.S. and other power nations need to approach climate change, at the pace of war. Like that, like we
Mhm.
need to that is the pace at which things get done and when they're most efficient. And it was such an interesting way of phrasing it, because right now it's sort of being kicked down the road a little bit and procrastinated on, like, yeah, we'll cut emissions by this year, or we'll we'll put a shoulder behind reforestation, but let's just sort of call it carbon credits, and then we can cut some shortcuts. And I mean, none of that's going to get us out of the mess. It's pretty simple math.
It's too slow. Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So on a war footing is what action needs to be happening. But getting organizations, getting governments to work on the war footing is not an easy task. And I believe your organization does that. They do try to advocate or influence governments. Uh, do you also have opportunities for remote learning or virtual collaborations?
Yes, we have something called the Global Living Room, and those, we're spinning one up. If people are interested in understanding what's coming up next, they can go to hatchexperience.org and sign up for the newsletter and information. But we're doing one around food systems and food security soon.
Mhm.
That'll be a series that we'll be inviting people into, and also one around the 9 planetary tipping points in the Amazon. Um, and so, yeah, there's ways, and also during COVID, we did a virtual version of Impact Labs where we had 134 people from, I think, 30 countries form 20 teams around these different
Wow,
projects.
that's big. Mhm.
And so there was these 20 different projects, and at least half of them ended up becoming funded projects. One of them was a voter mobilization initiative called No Vote Left Behind. We partnered with Alec Baldwin and Aloe Black and Shepard Fairey and a bunch of artists and musicians and so forth, and youth activists. And we
Lovely.
aggregated about a 25 million audience reach,
That's
between
amazing.
our partnership with Unify.org. And it was all, it was nonpartisan. It was not trying to get people to vote one way or the other, but just to get out and vote. And it was a powerful initiative. But that really woke us up to the opportunity for virtual, which, like, here you are in India and interviewing me in Montana in
Yes.
the U.S. And a lot of this stuff was possible pre-COVID, but COVID sort of peeled back the layer
True.
inviting us to explore more and what else is possible in that time of um, chaos. And nobody
Right.
nobody would have ever guessed that we could every industry in the world would grind to a halt in 8 days, and then when it does, previously thought impossible, it's that window to sort of consider what else is possible.
Wonderful. Yes. So, like they say never. You always have a solution. You always have something that you can make your way through. Wonderful. So, last question here, Yarrow. What is the best way for someone interested in Hatch to get in touch or learn about your organization's work and volunteer if you need volunteers?
Beautiful. Thank you for that question. The best way is probably to either email experience at hatchexperience.org. That's hatchexperience.org,
CE.
and or go to the website and fill out the form on the contact info on that, and we'll have someone get back to you. And every year we do two summits, and we also do a series of sort of topic focused impact
Mhm.
labs. And next year, we're celebrating our 20th year, even though this year is sort of technically our 20th year. But next year, we're 2 decades of impact, and the summits are kind of a portal into the rest of the Hatch Experience Network, which is global. And yeah, we would love to if you're working on social impact, or you're interested in learning how
Yeah.
to have more impact, make more impact, meet people that are also rolling that boulder up the impossible odds. Then yeah, reach out to us.
Reach out to you. Absolutely. Well, it has been a true privilege to have you join us today, Yarrow. Lovely. Thank you for reminding us that collaboration can lead to exponential change and that hope, inspiration, and the boundless potential that humanity possesses can be harvested when we come together with a purpose.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for hatching a better world.
Thank you very much. So, what do you do with an idea?